conditional reasoning, all it really is just a rule that only applies in certain circumstances. So there's a rule that's not a hard and fast rule. It's a rule that has a trigger on the rule. And there are many ways of phrasing a rule that has a condition on it. Again, we're talking about conditional reasoning. There are many ways of phrasing a rule with a condition on it, but they all mean the same thing. You just have to get familiar with the ways that they talk about these conditions. So consider this example. This pen, this dry erase pen, if I drop it, it will fall. Yeah? Everybody agree? If I drop it, it will fall? Does that mean it's gonna fall for sure? No, it's not falling now because I didn't drop it. Okay, so if I drop it, it will fall. The trigger on the rule, the thing that makes shit happen, is when I drop the pen. I drop the pen falls, right? Okay. So the sufficient condition on that rule, by the way, sufficient just means enough to prove one other thing. The trigger on the rule, the sufficient condition on the rule is if I drop it. If I drop it, then it will fall. So the sufficient condition is I dropped it. The necessary condition is the thing that happens when I drop it. If I drop it, then it must be true that it will fall. So the sufficient condition is the trigger on the rule. That's the thing that makes something happen, like squeezing the trigger on a gun. The necessary condition is the thing that must happen anytime the sufficient condition is met. So when I drop it, the thing has to fall, because I said, if I drop it, it will fall. And if I wanted to draw it out in the old school LSAT dogma way, using one of these arrows, the sufficient condition is on the left. That's the if. The necessary condition is on the right. That's the then. The sufficient condition on that rule was if I drop it. The necessary condition was then it will fall. Fairly simple, yeah. Sufficient is the trigger. Necessary is what happens when the trigger is pulled. Yes. Now, everybody knows commonsensically that if it's true that if I drop it, it will fall, everybody knows that if it didn't fall, I couldn't have dropped it. The rule was if I drop it, it has to fall. So if it didn't fall, then I could not have dropped it. That's common sense. And that's common sense that literally every 7th grader would understand. The rule, if I drop it, it will fall. Any halfway smart 7th grader would go, oh, it didn't fall? Well, then yeah, I mean, you couldn't have dropped it, because if you drop it, it has to fall. So if it didn't fall, it must not have dropped. This is common sense. This is also common sense with a name on the LSAT. We call this the contrapositive. And all the contrapositive is just another way of looking at that same rule. A rule and its contrapositive are the exact same thing. The rule, if you drop it, it will fall, and the rule, if it didn't fall, it couldn't have dropped, are just two different ways of saying the exact same thing. That's not a new rule. It's not a new concept. It's just common sense. It's just two different ways of saying the exact same thing.